It was messy and uncomfortable, and neither of us felt great about how we'd handled it. But we worked through it together instead of shutting down or walking away or letting it turn into something bigger and more damaging. We both apologized again and talked about what we could do differently next time. He said he'd set a reminder on his phone to text me if he was going to be more than 30 minutes late. I said I'd try to pause before assuming the worst, and actually ask him what was going on instead of building a story in my head. When we finally went to bed that night, we both felt closer instead of more distant. The fight had been scary because it showed we could still fall into old patterns, but working through it showed we were both committed to doing things differently. The following weekend, Miranda drove up to visit. She showed up Saturday morning with coffee and bagels, and we sat at the kitchen table while I filled her in on everything. I told her about the California trip and meeting Maya's parents and visiting the grave. I explained how my boyfriend had broken down crying and shared things with me he'd never told anyone. I talked about starting therapy with Gage and how hard it was to dig into the betrayal from my ex. I mentioned the fight my boyfriend and I had about him being late, and how we'd managed to work through it instead of letting it explode. Miranda listened to everything, and when I finished, she said she was proud of me for doing the actual work, instead of just saying I would. But then she leaned forward and her expression got more serious. She said she was glad I was making progress, but she also wanted to make sure I wasn't letting myself off the hook too easily. She reminded me that understanding where my trust issues came from didn't mean I got a pass for how I'd acted. She pointed out that I'd violated my boyfriend's privacy by figuring out his password and reading his texts, and I'd accused him of something horrible based on one message I didn't understand. She said the fact that I had trauma from my ex didn't excuse those choices. It explained them, but it didn't make them okay. Hearing her say it so directly stung, but I knew she was right. I'd been so focused on the revelation about Maya and our emotional breakthrough that I hadn't fully reckoned with my own actions. I'd invaded his privacy and made terrible accusations based on my own fears, rather than any actual evidence. Miranda wasn't trying to make me feel bad. She was trying to make sure I took real responsibility, instead of just understanding why I did what I did.